Debunking Putin's propaganda about NATO. Oh, so scary NATO. This is what we will talk about today. I'm really outraged about foreign politicians, include President-elect Donald Trump, keep repeating Putin's propaganda based on nothing, based on lies and utter garbage. This is why I'm bothering to make a video about NATO again. Hello there. I'm Elena. Welcome back to my channel Enough of Propaganda. Please like, subscribe, share my videos. Let's make truth available for everyone. This is my first video in 2025, so I'm welcoming all of you into New Year. I'm grateful to all of you, my dear subscribers, and my viewers, and people from Quora who came to support me here. I'm glad we're here together, that we are supporting Ukraine, and we are fighting propaganda. This is what I hope we will continue to do, and I hope Ukraine will win soon. I sure hope for their victory and complete defeat of Putin and his imperialistic Russia. And I hope all of you will help me with this. And we will make another video a little bit about what we achieved. But I congratulate you that all together, and together with the channel of Jake Bro, just that alone, in the last year, Jake Bro and his fundraisers collected money for 100 vehicles for Ukraine. And we all took part in it, I hope, at least I did, in all 3 campaigns. And this is one of the big achievements we had together. I really appreciate all your help. This is my playlist about NATO, and you're welcome to check it out. This video explains why former Soviet republics and Warsaw Pact countries voluntarily choose to join NATO in late 1990s and early 2000s. You're welcome to use it and debunk Putin's propaganda lies about oh so scary NATO. I suggest you share Americans with your President-elect Trump, since he denies knowing these facts. Why this is very important to know. One of the main justifications for Russia's aggressive genocidal war in Ukraine, pushed by Russian propaganda, is NATO's supposed expansion towards Russia's borders. According to the Kremlin, this expansion was a key factor in their decision to invade Ukraine in 2014 and in 2022. Moscow repeatedly claims that in 1990s, just before the collapse of Soviet Union and the Warsaw Pact, NATO and Western officials promised Gorbachev that NATO would never expand a single inch eastward. Putin's propaganda alleges that NATO betrayed these assurances by admitting former USSR republics and Warsaw Pact countries crossing Russia's so-called red lines and forcing it to act militarily to avoid NATO encirclement. This fabricated story about so-called Western betrayal and broken promises is a cornerstone of Russia's justification for the invasion of Ukraine and its ongoing war crimes. Putin and his government use this narrative to deflect blame for the atrocities Russia commits in Ukraine daily onto the Western world. The truth about NATO expansion. This video, made by RealLifeLore, what Russia doesn't want you to know about your history, provides an excellent explanation. I'll just give you a summary, but I suggest you watch the whole video so you know exactly how it happened, why it happened, and what exactly was going on. Here's what the video reveals, with my comments. Number 1. No formal agreement against NATO expansion. Some verbal assurances were given to the Soviet Union during the German reunification talks, suggesting NATO wouldn't expand eastward. However, these were never formalized in a treaty. Even Gorbachev later confirmed there was no such agreement existed. Andrei Kozyrev, Russia's foreign minister under Boris Yeltsin, also admitted that despite efforts to find evidence of a broken NATO promise, no such documents exist. At the time of the unification of Germany, nobody, including Gorbachev, could predict the collapse of the USSR and the Warsaw Pact. NATO's potential expansion beyond East Germany simply wasn't an issue. Nobody, absolutely no one, could predict that. It wasn't even discussed. It wasn't even an option, an issue, a possibility. Nobody could believe it gonna happen. So there was no question about it. And Gorbachev confirmed it, and several others, include Kozyrev. The second important thing to keep in mind that USSR consists out of 15 republics, and the collapse of the USSR created new independent states. Many of these nations, and this is just a part of the USSR republics, recalling past Russian domination, sought NATO membership for security. Even Putin's Russia once expressed interest in joining NATO, as I'll show you in my video. Voluntarily NATO membership. Former Warsaw Pact countries like Poland, Hungary, and the Czech Republics in 1999, and later the Baltic states 2004, joined NATO willingly, fearing potential Russian aggression. And Professor Alexander Stubb, president of Finland, explains why Finland wanted to join NATO in another of my videos. I'll show you a bit later. But Soviet invasions and conquests was continuing after the Bolshevik Revolution several times, as you could see in the video. Historical fears of Russian aggression based on that after 1917 collapse of the Russian Empire, newly independent states like Ukraine, the Baltics, and Poland faced Russia reconquest attempts. Similar fear emerged after the USSR fall. And the same thing happened right before the World War II, before the Great Patriotic War, as Russians call it. So Russia basically came and took parts of independent countries. Post-Soviet Russian interventions. Russia intervened militarily in Moldova and created the Transnistria, which was completely dependent on Russia and provided everything from Russia. Right now, Transnistria is still, nobody recognizes it. It's a part of Moldova, for the international world is concerned. Only Russia is pretending Transnistria and something independent, which is Russia feeding it, providing it free gas, when many Russian cities are not, in many Russian places like villages, sitting without gas. They not even have possibility to have gas. And yet they provided it to Transnistria for free just to create a problem there. Why they need to create problems? They created similar problems in Moldova and in Ukraine later with those so-called republics, because according to NATO, you can't really join the alliance if you have unresolved territorial issue. This is why those sores on the bodies of Moldova, Ukraine, Georgia were created by Russia to prevent them from joining NATO. And right now there is a conflict, as you know, about finally, after 3 years, Ukraine stopped providing them gas. Enough drinking blood of Ukrainians who are dying every day in the brutal Russian war. And finally, when the contract expired, Ukraine said, no, we're not going to provide Russian money to kill us. Oh boy, so squeal in Transnistria right now, and so on. But these are the wars which Russia created after Soviet Union collapsed. So Russia intervened militarily in Moldova, Transnistria 1992, Georgia, South Ossetia and Abkhazia 1992-1993, and Tajikistan in 1992-97, showcasing its intent to dominate its neighbors. Chechnya wars. Those two Chechen wars, which is Chechen people had to suffer Russian aggression, genocide, murder of them, and completely wiping out their city of Grozny. And what happened? The world was silent. So Russia's brutal wars in Chechnya further demonstrated its unwillingness to relinquish control over territories. This is the death toll in different wars. First and Second Chechen wars, 180,000 deaths. Abkhazia was 30,000 people. Kosovo, and so on. Bosnia was 100,000. And that's where the Russia everywhere took part in it and made it happen and helped it happen. The 1993 Russian political crisis. This is Russian former president Boris Yeltsin. Yeltsin's violent suppression of parliamentary rebellion signaled a shift towards autocracy, alarming Eastern European nations. This is what was happening. They basically shot at Russian parliament. This was a clear sign that Russia is turning away from democracy. This is Ukrainian Avdiivka. This is what the Western nations trying to avoid, because everybody who are NATO, they rely on the alliance, they rely on Article 5, And this is not happening in Sweden. This is not happening in Finland. It's not happening in Poland so far. This is what happens to the countries who isn't in the NATO. This is Ukraine. And this is why the next point, Eastern European security concerns. Nations joined NATO to protect themselves from potential Russian expansion, relying on Article 5's collective defense. So Russian narrative versus reality. While Russia claims NATO's expansion provoked its aggression, the historical context and actions by post-Soviet Russia demonstrate the genuine security concerns of its neighbors, throwing into the garbage Moscow justification. As I said, this is whole playlist about this. This is Russia who attacked NATO. And I proved it in my video, as it was proved by the insider investigations and Christo Groziev, for example, that no, it isn't NATO who attacked Russia, it was Russia who attacked NATO. This is very important video. Putin's NATO application, Truth and Lies. Russia's true motives. I will show you a piece of my video where Putin himself basically disproving all his own propaganda.
Россия и Украина развивают свои двусторонние отношения в особом режиме. Это близкие государства, и в последние годы отношения между Россией и Украиной развиваются особенно позитивно. Что касается расширения НАТО в целом, вы наше отношение к этому вопросу знаете, оно не меняется. Но это совсем не значит, что Украина должна остаться в стороне от процессов, которые идут на пользу укрепления мира и безопасности в Европе. И Украина суверенное государство и сама вправе выбирать путь обеспечения своей собственной безопасности. Не вижу здесь ничего особенного или нечто такого, что омрачало бы отношения между, могло бы омрачать отношения между Россией и Украиной.
So Putin clearly stated and confirmed again and again for people who doesn't know it that Ukraine is a sovereign state and has the right to make its own decisions regarding its security. So he has no issues with that, not like anybody normal, insane in the head, questioning that Ukraine is an independent state. If somebody does, I have a video about it, which will prove you 100% without any doubts that Ukraine is an independent state. And this is why it's shocking when Trump is repeating Putin's propaganda about this, saying that, oh, Putin has concerns, he can have as many concerns as he like, any independent state can join NATO. And Russia wanted to join NATO, and I showed you in this one of my video that Russia wanted to join NATO. So you're welcome to watch this video and find out. So Russia unprovoked invasion of Georgia 2008 and Ukraine 2014 even more validated the fears of its neighbors. In 2014, Ukraine wasn't even pursuing NATO membership. They wasn't even accepted. And they basically stopped even pursuing it at the time. And yet, Russia attacked Ukraine. Russia continued aggression towards European countries, such as harassing their planes and ships in international airspace or waters, and conducted military training to practice a nuclear strike on neutral at the time Sweden, drove even more countries to seek the protection of NATO. So I remember all these years. I was watching Russia because I'm originally from Russia, and this is what was happening. There are plenty of videos on YouTube when Russian planes harassing foreign ships in the international waters. The same thing that target practice on Stockholm and Sweden, that was absolutely disgusting. Meanwhile, before Russia attacked Ukraine in 2014, for no reason other than Putin's desire to build an empire, as I have proven in several of my videos, NATO was significantly reducing its forces in Europe. Even after Russia's attack on Crimea, Ukraine, NATO planned to continue reducing its forces in Europe in 2015. In 2016, Putin created his own army, the National Guard of Russia, an army controlled not by the Russian government, but by Putin personally. The size of the National Guard of Russia was larger than that of the all US forces in Europe as part of NATO's defense at the end of the Cold War. In this article, you will find out how much NATO was reducing its forces in Europe. And if you can't see it in here, I talked about this article in several of my videos, for example, who and when started the war in Ukraine, and why Russia is an aggressor in Ukraine. So you could see that article and see how much. It was huge reduction. Meanwhile, the National Guard of Russia, what I just told you, 300,000 personnel in 84 units across Russia. It was Putin's personal army, bigger than all the United States presence in Europe as part of NATO at the time. Putin's 2022 full-scale invasion of Ukraine even drove countries like Sweden and Finland to join NATO. Their leaders stated that Russia's aggression left them no choice. As you can hear in my video about Finland, where Professor Alexander Stubb disproved and Putin's propaganda and Mearsheimer propaganda about NATO. This was all a lie. And this is the statement from Finland, from Finnish person and a leader of Finland, who is living on the border with Russia for many years. And the final proof that Russia is not afraid of NATO expansion is that now, after over 10 years of war in Ukraine and almost 3 years of the full-scale invasion, Russia is taking troops and air defense systems away from the border with NATO countries like Finland and Japan and moving them to the front in Ukraine. In this article, Norwegian Army Chief General Erik Kristoffersen revealed in September 2023 that Russia had withdrawn approximately 80% of its troops from the border zone. Vladimir Putin knows very well that NATO is not a threat against Russia, commented Kristoffersen. If he believed we were threatening Russia, he couldn't have moved all his troops to Ukraine. This video by Jake Bro explaining a lot of things. And for example, what Donald Trump says. And he repeating Russian propaganda, and it's just so disgusting to watch when the person who actually won the election trying to kick his opponent who lost the election for no reason whatsoever. Technically, part of it is true, and this is what Trump was trying to talk about. Biden, US support Ukraine, NATO bid, and Vice President Joe Biden told Ukraine that he's supporting the idea to join NATO eventually. This article was from 2009, so it's roughly 15 years ago.
When Joe Biden was vice president, he was meeting with the president of Ukraine. This is Viktor Yushchenko, who the Russians poisoned and tried to kill. And this was 15 years ago. And honestly, Joe Biden was right in 2009. If Ukraine had joined NATO right away, while Dmitry Medvedev was president, then this war would have been avoided.
I personally conducted an extensive research on this war from 2014 when it started in Ukraine, and I totally agree with what Jake Bro says. In this, there would be no war. If Ukraine would have been in NATO back then, nothing would have touched Ukraine. Russia does not attack officially and openly NATO. They only can conduct all those hybrid operations. So Jake Bro is right, and he told about history of Ukraine absolutely correctly. About poisoning Yushchenko and about the Yanukovych was elected, and he, because he was pro-Russian and Russian puppet, he backed down and out of ideas to join NATO or European Union. Not joining European Union, but making a trade agreement with European Union. So Trump's attempt to blame Joe Biden for the war in Ukraine is useless, because Ukraine was attacked in 2014. And they were attacked because they were not in NATO. This is a joke. Ukrainians made a stamp saying the Budapest Memorandum was, how to say politely, garbage. Of course it's a joke, and especially Zelensky president, which wasn't president at the time whatsoever, wouldn't even be on that kind of meeting. That was Russian Boris Yeltsin and Bill Clinton and so on. So basically, Ukraine gave up the third in the world nuclear arsenal to Russia in exchange of empty paper. And now Ukraine is suffering from it, and many Ukrainians died and get bombed, shelled, and killed in this genocidal Russian war. And this is for you real reasons for Russian aggression. This is Russian Nazi ideologist Alexander Dugin. He said it best.
Without Ukraine, Russia cannot become once more the empire. With Ukraine inside of Russian zone of control, it will become empire once more. That is a kind of law, nothing personal. This war or military operation, special military operation in Ukraine is about that. It is about geopolitics.
He said it. Basically nothing personal. We just want to murder you, just because we want to be an empire. And we are thinking that without you, we can't be an empire once again. This is the truth about the war in Ukraine and about so-called scary NATO. Bottom line, it is not NATO that attacked Russia or Ukraine and annexed territories there. It is Russia that signed the Budapest Memorandum and then attacked Ukraine and NATO, as I showed you in this my video. These are attacks, Russian attacks on NATO in the past, before even the war in Ukraine started. So, it is Russia and previously the USSR that fought aggressive wars and attacked its neighboring countries. It is Russia who threatened the world with nukes almost weekly. It is Putin's Russia that is waging an information and hybrid war against NATO and other countries across the globe. And finally, NATO is beginning to wake up to the threat and has even issued a warning. There is a real prospect of an unconventional attack by Russia against NATO, such as an act of sabotage or arson, will cause substantial casualties, a top alliance official has told Sky News. We can definitely count dozens Russian hybrid attacks, up to 100 for sure, but there is a lot of foiled plots. Mr. Apathurai, NATO's Deputy Assistant Secretary General for Innovation, Hybrid and Cyber, told Sky News in an interview. Good morning, NATO. So another Russian lie, also scary and aggressive NATO, has been debunked. And I have also a video about actual Russian attacks inside Europe. Include the attempt to assassinate boss, German defense industry boss in Germany, and so on. And recently you all saw how Russia destroying cables in the Baltic Sea. One of the recent attempts, as reported by this source, which I never seen before, but I heard it from several more reliable sources, which I know for a long time. So basically, former Russian mercenary was captured by US border patrol agents near the city of Roma. And what happened? He is the former Wagner mercenary, Timur Praliev. And he was reportedly carrying 2 passports, one from Russia, one from Kazakhstan, as well as some money in US cash and 60,000 Mexican pesos. And when they search his backpack, they find that he is transporting drone. Why? That's a good question. And many of those hybrid Russian attacks will continue. And they could happen in American soil, unfortunately. In the description to any of my videos, you'll find a lot of sources, which you're welcome to check out and verify for yourself. Don't trust anybody on word, please verify the information. And in the end, I want to say I'm sorry as a Canadian that lots of bad things are happening in the United States, from the attacks on American citizens, like for example in New Orleans. And I actually have been on the Bourbon Street, I have been in New Orleans, beautiful city. I'm very sad it happened. And I wouldn't be surprised if Putin connect to that, and so on. And right now there is a big fire going on in Los Angeles, for example. And Canadians, as a good neighbors, are helping, and several of them even more can help, and they are on standby. But right now, waterbombing pilots and crews from Quebec and British Columbia already fighting the wind-whipped flames in the United States. So we are being good neighbors. I don't know how many Americans will remember that when the orange clown will say Canadian Nazis are a threat to the United States. Let's invade Canada and bomb them to the ground, exactly like Putin is doing in Ukraine. So I'm really disappointed in some Americans, and especially in Donald Trump, who is spewing Putin's propaganda lies about NATO, about Canada, about his imperialistic ideas that borders mean nothing and so on. But this is a theme for a different story and different video. At this time, we are standing with our neighbors and we are standing with Ukraine. We are Canadians. We know what is right. We stand up for what is right. And I sure hope that my viewers from any country, including the United States, will support us in the just fight for the freedom, democracy, and for survival of Ukrainian people. Thank you for watching. Please keep supporting Ukraine. If I offended anybody, I'm not Ukrainian. So please don't hold anything I said against Ukraine. But I'm telling the truth. I told the truth to the Russians. I telling the truth to Ukrainians, Canadians, and I don't see why wouldn't I tell the truth to Americans. Some of my readers on Quora said to me in the past that I care about American people even more than some of their politicians. And I'm very sad to say that perhaps this is true. I don't want my neighbors suffering. I don't want them living in the USSR and Russia. And I don't want this, what happened to us in Russia and in the USSR, and to people, what is happening to people in Ukraine, happens to the United States. I really hope it will not come to this. But it's time to stand up for Ukraine. It's time to defend our democracy and our freedom. Thank you for watching. Have a great day, and see you later. Learn the truth and stay informed.